AI is moving at a speed that the speed is almost too fast.
When I go think about what have been the transformational forces in the history of industrialization, there are two or three moments that come to mind. If you go back maybe about 100 years, oil was one that led to a pretty massive revolution. The second big wave was probably the silicon wave. And now I think we are coming into the third wave, which is the AI wave.
Hemant Mohapatra is one of the best AI investors out there. Early investor in SarvamAI, Pixxel, Solana, Supabase.
He's worked at top Silicon Valley companies like Google and AMD before joining A16Z. After moving back to India in 2018, he's backing the most ambitious founders through Lightspeed India.
You said that India needs to build because, like, for example, if we only keep consuming foreign AI, we'll pay rent for decades.
India needs to have its own capability around water, power, food. Depending on that on some other country, you're kind of screwed. And then you go a layer above that. What do you want to manufacture? Where you are self-sustaining, batteries, motors, defense equipment, satellites, GPS, chips, and the rest of the stuff. Find somebody else produces the screws. Industrialization was the first superpower, and then whoever owned it and owned it became the next superpower. AI is the next superpower generator. Whoever owns it will become the next superpower.
What are the things that get you to say yes versus no?
Look,
We are now a part of the Zerodha Media Network.
Hey Hemant, thank you so much for coming in. Welcome to the Inner Circle podcast by GrowthX. I'm going to jump right in. I feel like there's so many things happening in AI right now in the entire world. And the idea of today's pod is basically, obviously, understand what's happening globally, but also if I'm a 25-year-old founder who's building an AI, I think at the end of this pod, the idea is, do I get a lot more clarity on where do I prioritize, what do I not do, and essentially just understand the entire market thoroughly. So I want to jump right into it, and I think I want to set the scene, which is like the global AI space right now. You said that we're in the extractive phase of the AI supercycle, where GPUs and foundation models get mined and a few players win on scale and price. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So look, when I go think about what have been the transformational forces in the history of industrialization, there are two or three moments that come to mind. If you go back maybe about 100 years, oil was one that led to a pretty massive revolution. It got embedded in society in many, many ways. Mm-hmm. You could almost argue the society was shaped around oil, so people could live in suburbs because they had cars to go back and forth between suburbs and the city, and so on. So it actually did shape the nature of humanity and relationships and all of that. The second big wave was probably the silicon wave that began in the 1960s, which is what is now Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. And that was a CPU wave. A bunch of smart people figured out that you could put sand together in different interesting ways, and it becomes wafers, and wafers can be cut into shape, and it could be fabricated, and then suddenly you have this power of, this machine that thinks faster than you in many things. Right. Specific things, but many things, and now that machine can think about many things in a very generalized way, but we'll come to that. Mm-hmm. And that was the second wave. And now I think we are coming into the third wave, which is the AI wave. Now, how do these waves begin, and when do you invest in what part of the cycle of this wave? What kind of founders should plug into which part of this cycle to be successful? It's all very interesting. So maybe I'll try to break it down. When I sort of wrote this article about the extractive and the distributive phase of these super cycles, what I had in mind was, if you go back to the oil cycle, 30, 40, 50, in the case of oil, maybe hundreds of years of work, R&D, had gone literally into the ground to figure out, well, does this hole have a bit of oil in it or not? And then people were mostly wrong. But at one point, 30, 40, 50 years of trial and error and some scientific surveys and whatnot and some black magic, they figured out, if I dig oil in these specific areas, in these specific ways, in that specific depth, there's a very high likelihood that oil might come out, will come out. And then over time, at least the US became so good at that they began to occupy countries, which are all, because it's a scientific thing that you knew where the oil could be.
Don't we all
So
If there is one thing that you should take away from this video is that AI is here to stay. See, with AI, careers and businesses have changed. Whether you're in product, marketing, sales, engineering, doesn't matter. The market is gonna keep asking us, can you not do this 100x better and faster with AI? So the question is, how do you really become AI first? See, it comes down to three things. First, being in a place where people around you are building and tinkering with AI. Second, you need the right structure to learn the right AI foundations. And lastly, you need the right tools to integrate AI into your work. And these three things are available to GrowthX members from day one. GrowthX has 4,500 members from places like Lovable, Sarvam, Apple, Razorpay, Google, Meta, ElevenLabs, and more. These are people you can trust, learn from, and build with. The community is not open for all, but you can check if you're eligible in under 2 minutes with the link in the description below. Now, let's go back to the video.
In the beginning, the entirety of the R&D and the expenses were literally, essentially, dollars put into ground to just figure out where the hell to dig. And then the first wave of the oil-led industrialization sort of began. And what I mean by extractive phase is that when you are closer to the extractive part of the cycle, a cycle being the oil cycle, or the GPU or the CPU cycle, when you are close to the beginning of the cycle, the primary job of founders is as to extract that resource. It could be a resource from the ground, it could be a resource from CPUs, it could be a resource from GPUs.
Anywhere.
And if you are closer to the extractive part of the cycle, then you accrue value much faster. That's where the excitement is, that's where the engineers go, the developers go, that's where the money goes. So oil, if you look at the prices of oil companies, the Exxons, the Chevrons, the BPs and all of that, the first 20, 30 years from 1920s to 1950s, 1960s, maybe all the way to 1970s, they had massive uplift in market caps. The first 20, 30 years, it was just figuring out how well can I dig and how efficiently and how cheaply can I dig it. And the extractive cycle was just maturing from 1920 to maybe 1940. Ford Motors was going to take that oil and put it into machines and then run cars with it. And people were trying to take that oil and put it into airplanes and fly airplanes with it, and so on and so forth. But that phase was still very young. Extract oil was still maturing quickly, but to take oil and build something and distribute it to people was still very, very early. So we were still in the early days of the extractive cycle, and the kind of founders who were good at extracting this resource had to be of a certain kind, and we can speak about what that kind is. That also has changed over time. So now, come to 1940, you could sort of see that oil was becoming ubiquitous. Frankly, the story is that because of the World War I and IIs, the extractive cycle got accelerated. People needed more and more resources, blah, blah, blah. A lot of money went into it. And eventually, companies like Ford Motors and then GM came up, and then they began to sort of really go scale up. I think in 1930s or 1935 or some time around that, Ford was producing, I forget, like 1,000 cars a day or some massive scale like that. And it began with one a week or one a day, 10 years back. And at some point, they were 40% of the entirety of the car market. So that was when 1940s was when we started to enter the distributive part of the oil cycle. People had taken oil, they knew what to do with it, and they knew where to put it to get the maximum value. And the value shifted to people who could not extract oil as much as they could take the oil and put it into the next tier of the business and a product, and then start to sell it.
And that took almost 20 years.
In the case of oil, just to start the ramping up of the oil cycle probably took 30, 40, 50 years of just black magic. Founders going all the way, to the hinterlands and figuring out what to do to dig for oil. And there are movies written about that, right? So, and then 40s is when we began with the distributive cycle. And then if you think about the distributive cycle, there's a different kind of founder excels there. The ones that are more extractive cycle, they are taking a very different kind of risk. Like they're almost extracting one from nothing, right? There's a lot of R&D required, a lot of that required. You need to rally people of a certain kind to do it, take risk of a certain kind, you need to attract capital towards you of a certain kind with a certain promise. On the distributive side, it's once you know that you can build a car, then it's not about I have a car and you don't have a car. It's a lot more about what kind of car do you have? You have a 4-cylinder engine or a 6-cylinder engine.
Interesting.
Oh, your car is steel colored, mine is black, and like steel is more interesting. I can brand that better. So distributive cycles work because the go-to-market strength, not just product and R&D strength. And the founders who are much better at marketing and selling it end up winning that war, which is why GM won and Ford didn't, because Ford was born into the extractive cycle of oil.
Interesting.
And GM was born into the distributive cycle of oil. So what GM did was, you know what, I don't care. What color you want is the color I'll give you. And Ford said, I can give you any color you want as long as it's black. Right? So that's how distributive cycles kind of work out, and the kind of founders that are there. So now if you were to fast forward, same thing happened with the CPU cycle, 60s, 70s. You having a CPU was what differentiated you from me not having a CPU. But by the 90s, everybody had something or the other. Somebody had it in their laptop, somebody had it in a big server somewhere sitting in an IBM, and now everybody has a CPU in their devices. They have 5 devices with CPUs inside. So it's not about me having one and you not having one. It's more about, how cool is your machine with a CPU? How cool is your iPhone versus mine? So it's more distributed now.
Right.
But that CPU cycle ended up making companies like Intel, AMD, and ARM for a large part. They accrued a lot of value in the beginning of the cycle. By the time we entered 90s, the CPU cycle had made compute almost ubiquitous, not at the level that we have it now. But then the internet cycle began.
Right.
And everybody could have a machine, they could do compute on the machine in their pockets, in their household desktops.
We are almost like in the start of the AI supercycle.
So in the AI supercycle, we are now at the very beginning. Right? So we are coming to I would say maybe the first S-curve, the plateau of the internet cycle. The internet cycle has been running since 1990s. We are now 30 years in. Now most of the problems that you can solve with pure internet software are kind of solved. There are like 50 companies doing a productivity software, 500 companies doing security this or whatever that, right? So now that cycle is almost like slowing down. The music may not be stopping, but it's certainly slowing down. And now we have gotten to the beginning of the extractive cycle for AI, because 30, 40 years of research has gone into it. We've gone through 4 or 5 winters of AI.
Interesting.
And now we have finally found something that starts to look like magic.
Right.
We know, and what is the resource now? It used to be oil droplets and CPU cycles, then GPU cycles in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now it is an AI token. So now if you were to sort of play that game out again, people who are nearest the extractive cycle of extractive part of this cycle are the people who know how to build something that can emit a token on the other side. And those are essentially the kind of companies that are more like ASML or AMD or Intel or of course NVIDIA. And then of course you have other companies like Etched and Grok and Cerberus and so on and so forth, because they're extracting value and they're emitting a token, which is a resource. They're essentially extracting an AI token and pushing it into the world. And those are the ones that have accrued the most value from the very beginning of the cycle. You can see where, companies like NVIDIA have become from few $100 billion companies to
multi-trillion.
And I was at a point when at AMD, when you were looking to buy NVIDIA for less than a few $1 billion.
Wow, you guys were looking to buy NVIDIA?
We ended up buying ATI, which was in retrospect quite a big mistake, because that didn't really go as well for us. But maybe if we had bought NVIDIA, NVIDIA wouldn't have been what it is today.
Maybe, yeah. But like AMD buying NVIDIA, that's crazy.
Yeah, we almost did. The thing that really kept the deal from not happening is Jensen wanted to be the CEO of the entire company. And it was a much smaller company than compared to AMD, but he wanted to be the CEO of the joint company, and that wasn't possible.
Interesting.
And we ended up buying ATI, and the internal joke was AMD plus ATI, essentially anagrams to damn it. So that's essentially how it went. Kind of lost the GPU wave. But now we are at the extractive part.
Right.
The very bottom is AMDs, Intels, NVIDIAs. Right above that are people who just take the extracted resource, which is an oil droplet or a GPU cycle or now ADI token, and they do something interesting with it, and that's the LLM layer. Right above that is the LLM layer, right?
So that's basically where the Anthropic, the OpenAIs, is that?
Yeah, that's the foundation model layer.
Talking about LLM layers, you said that there's no reason to start another Anthropic now. Performance will be asymptomatically match. The big ones will only keep getting bigger. Do you believe that there's no gold in building another foundational model from India?
Look, I think companies should exist to solve for a need. It is the only reason a company needs to exist. There is no reason otherwise. If you can create a need, humans want to go to Mars, create a need, and then you can service the need. And there are some very generational founders who can create a need. They understand a need, a much more latent need. But if you're not solving a problem that the world is really looking for, really dying for, you only need to really build a company. Now, what happens in the foundational model layer, it's absolutely a layer which needs to exist. But when I said we are reaching the asymptote of the performance curve, what that means is we are at a point right now in the foundation model's development journey that we are reaching an asymptote like this. So the first few years were very high in terms of growth and development and the quality and the performance improvement of the models. In fact, for the longest time, the models were moving much faster than the layers that were building on top of the models, and it's not very uncommon. I'm sure in the 1920s, Chevrons and the other companies were improving how quickly you can dig for oil.
Correct.
And Ford was figuring out how to build great machines,
Right.
which is totally fine. The best engineers probably want to join a Chevron versus something else.
Correct.
So that's the situation that we were in for 2 to 3 years, right? The top engineers, the top scientists, top researchers all wanted to go join the extractive layer because they knew that's where the value is accruing.
Correct.
Because that's where all the excitement, that's where all the work is, that's where all the the value extraction is. Now I think I'm starting to sort of see a point where we are reaching the beginning, if not the middle of the asymptote. So now as asymptotes work like that, a little bit of improvement in performance required a lot more capital. So $10 billion could have gotten you 5% performance improvement or maybe 5x performance improvement 3 years ago. Now 10 billion might give you 0.1% performance improvement. So that extractive layer, that foundation model layer in this case, and we'll just talk about foundation model layers now, they essentially will, and not that every extractive layer needs to become commodity, but AI tokens are looking like they will eventually become a utility. People have talked about that. Just like oil from you is the same as oil from N, but it's just priced differently because you can offer a better price. And you are in more places, so it's more convenient to buy Chevron, and you do other things like loyalty card and blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
Right, so here, the thing is now foundation models have gotten to a point where every 0.1, 0.2, 0.3% of improvement will require double-digit $1 billion of capital. So these models don't differentiate from each other. Even if they do it today, they would not tomorrow differentiate with each other on the basis of performance, right? Or will they differentiate on the basis of price? And that's how commodity layers work. Commodity has heavy price elasticity. So, and who can drive prices down the best? People with the largest balance sheets. So there are the Googles, the Metas, the NVIDIAs, and so on and so forth. And then there are people who can raise large balance sheets, which is the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, the Mistrals, and a few others, XAI. But not that.
Not a lot many.
So now, I'm not saying that you cannot break this hegemony. You can absolutely break this hegemony. What are the three, ultimate laws of AI? One law of compute scaling, the law of data scaling, and law of algorithmic scaling, right? So compute is straightforward. You have algorithm is the hardest thing to get right. If you define a new algorithm where you can hill climb a lot faster to the answer, either intuitively, instinctively, or whatever, right? Analytically, then you have a better algorithm to get to the answer. I mean, transform algorithm is what people think is the current state of the art, but there'll be more that come in.
Exactly.
And that requires wandering the desert for 10 years, 5 years, another 30-year cycle. Who knows how long it might happen tomorrow, might never happen.
Right.
On the path to AGI/ASI. So algorithmic advantages can certainly, change the asymptote completely for you. It can flatten it completely, right? Because you're climbing a different hill.
Correct.
That hill is not asymptotic anymore. It's at the beginning of that hill. It starts at the end of the asymptote. It starts from zero again. So the second is compute. You have an algorithm. It's solving a problem. Solving it fine, but it's slow. Throw more compute at it. Maybe you'll solve it faster, and that takes money. The computer is expensive. But you go down in price. Hardware always comes down in price. Software goes up in price. But it's not going to go down so easily because that layer is controlled by, frankly, 1 or 2 companies. So they have no incentive to drive prices down in this case. So, there's massive rent seeking that's going to happen at the chip layer and at the LLM layer. So compute seems like it's going to be very expensive. And then remaining is data.
Right.
And we can talk a lot about data. Right? Data can certainly give you the advantage. You can get to the answer faster because you are, passing through the, the jigsaw puzzle, but just you have the right clues. Don't go here, don't go there, go here. And you can probably spend less compute to get to the same answer.
Right.
So, and that requires lots and lots of fine-tuned data, densely labeled data, and so on. And we may have an advantage there because we have a lot of data. We can speak about that in India. But we may have an advantage there. But algorithm requires a ton of R&D and talent that we need to either pull back or develop in-house. You look at our percentage of R&D papers that go out of India, it's very minuscule, right? And all the ICMLs and the NeurIPS, it's very low. So that the facts are. I wish it was much higher, but it is not. It's sitting out of India. Indians probably produce a lot, but they are sitting in India. They're not working for Indian companies and Indian researchers. So algorithmic advantages are going to be hard. We got to start doing that. We got to invest a lot more capital there, time there, government policy, all of that has to happen. And compute is expensive, so it depends on what people are able to spend. And some of this compute cannot be private equity and venture capital, because that's not what the business model of private equity venture capital is, to solve for CapEx. It's a very different model.
Talking about, I think we've spoken about LLMs, but I want to talk about the middleware.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about middleware that you've spoken specifically is that the middleware target keeps moving, right? So someone, we had like these PDF scrapers, or we had talk to your PDF, and obviously now you don't need those. You can just like put it in ChatGPT or any other tool. So that target's always moving.
Yeah.
I think two questions there. First one being, how fast does the target keep moving in your experience? Because you looked at multiple cycles. And number two, is there even like an imaginary line that these foundational models will never cross and come into the application layer?
Yeah, it's a great question. Something that I think about a lot. Let's tackle the middleware piece first, right? Okay. So there is the bottom layer, and for lack of better phrasing, it's just the foundation model layer. And then there is stuff that's built on top that the consumer will touch, right? And there's a bunch of APIs in the middle that connect the two fabrics together. And then there's middleware that sometimes can talk to the upper layer, can talk to the lower layer. You can even have middleware that services the lower layer, passes data to it, and so on and so forth, clean data to it. So not technically in the middle, but it's still more closer to the bottom or to the top.
Yeah.
So what we have observed, so right now maybe if I were to pull back globally, because we see deal flow globally, India, Southeast Asia, Japan, Australia, Europe, US, it's very clear that today, and I don't know how long it'll stay, but today investing in AI is quite bimodal. On the extreme left are the hard to do categories, but no, it'll make money. The winners will make more money. There'll be very few winners, but they'll make more money because there will be very few.
Like?
So on the left will be, chip companies, data center companies, power companies, energy, infrastructure. Right above that would be LLM companies. Above that would be data companies. Scale.ai, all that, data infrastructure companies. And on the extreme right is consulting companies. Not even applications. Beyond that is
consulting companies.
They know they'll make money. So right now it's so broken. They got to stitch everything together piece by piece. What is your problem? Oh, I need this and that. I have these 5 integrations and I need that 50 workflows.
Right.
Shit, they want to productize that.
Yeah.
The moment you start, trying to insert AI into a large enterprise, you will see that the LLMs are just too big, in fact, to really fit into the narrow alleyways of enterprise. What is the dark, narrow alleyways of enterprise workflows? They just can't fit in there.
Yeah.
So you have to design stuff that can squeeze through it and then provide value, has reliability, security, privacy, all of that. So consulting company, I don't know which one it was. I think it was PricewaterhouseCoopers that made $1.5 billion in just AI revenue last year.
Wow.
Not even this year, last year.
Wow.
Right, very early in the game. And this year maybe a lot more.
Right.
Maybe many more companies making $1.5 billion every year. So we know they'll make money. This stuff, some of it is investable. Foundation models, we have done majority of them.
Right.
Data centers, few of them, and so on and so forth. Chip companies, even harder, but we looked at most of them. On the right, consulting companies tend to be large. There's no small consulting firm that eventually becomes large. It's very hard to build that. It takes a long time. And they're not investable. They're not the likes of Accentures, Capgeminis.
Right.
So that remains, everything in the middle is where we play. But there's clarity here, there's clarity there. Everything in the middle is confusing. And depending on who you ask, they're more or less confused about different parts of this equation. The most confusing to me is middleware. Because I think some of the stuff that we have seen, foundation models not do 2 years ago, they are doing.
Right.
2 years ago, if we were to give a foundation model a PDF. It would not know how to parse it. It will know basic stuff, but it will not parse tables.
Right.
Now it parses tables, but it does not do radio buttons or drop downs or whatever. Maybe tomorrow it'll do even that.
Right.
Maybe it'll do all of that, but it'll not do written scripts, like handwritten scripts. But day after tomorrow, it'll probably do that also, right? So that middleware is getting eaten up one by one. There are still large pieces of it remaining, but some of this is getting absorbed by the LLM layers because there's a lot of movement happening there, and they haven't shown any interest in stopping, saying this far but no further, right? So that's hard. And on the application side, middleware tends to service them as well. But there is no large application that tells the middleware, you know what, I want you to service me this way. I want this API spec to look like that. I want that QPS to look like that. I want that, all that to look like this or that. Because frankly, the largest application on the application layer is ChatGPT, which is a full stack application. So there's no way for it to tell anybody else, middleware people build it this way or that way. Developers build it this way or that way.
Right.
So we are still very early in the application game to really tell the middleware what to do. So they're kind of, from neither side, they're getting clear indication. How far can you go and what do you want me to build for you? So it's very hard to really invest there. Applications, and there's a bunch of stuff, vertical, horizontal. I think it's a very interesting topic where I feel like India has a right to win, but not everywhere. And I can speak more about that later as we go. But I think that's really interesting. Is where the value eventually will accrue. Because when we get to the distributed part of the cycle, there are many more companies that can build there. There are not that many Chevrons, but there are a lot many more car companies, and there are a lot many more companies that service the car.
Right.
And buy the car. So yeah, that's where I think we are right now. Bimodal, confusing in the middle, gets less confusing or more confusing.
So there's no line that we know today that will not be crossed.
Yeah, so look, if you ask me 50 years ago, what was the history of industrialization look like? There were companies that were doing infra and they would stop at infra, right? I mean, the railroad companies did not build the actual consumer travel business.
Right.
The bus companies did not build the travel. There's no bus, Tata in India has the buses, but they're not in the bus service business. They could fully verticalize, but they haven't done that. They haven't built a consumer brand around that, even though they have a consumer DNA. They have done a bunch of other stuff. But today I'm seeing, it's an interesting point in time where I feel like some of the smaller problems have been solved, or maybe there's so much capital available that founders can quickly move and transition through layers that they couldn't earlier, right? Maybe the problems that are remaining are not big enough for their ambition, or their ambition has outgrown even the big problems that we've got. So today we've got SpaceX that is building the rocket company, but also has plans to build a telecom business.
Right.
We have a telecom company, Reliance, that has a consumer content business.
Correct.
But in the US, AT&T does not have a content business. Verizon doesn't have it. Comcast doesn't have it. Famously, Comcast and Netflix had this big conflict in the 90s, I think in 2000s. 2000s, of course, Netflix wasn't even there in the 90s, where Netflix was told by Comcast to give them a lot more rent for their packets to fly through Comcast Wild. Because, we've spent 30 years pushing this stuff into the ground, getting all the regulatory approvals, putting on a telephone wire. And what you're doing is you're charging them $30, $40 a month or whatever, and then,
extracting.
We get nothing. For that value, we get nothing from you.
Correct.
Right? Google had a problem with Uber when I was there. Larry was so angry for a while that, we are the reason why Uber exists, because without the map, there's nothing there.
Right.
And they used to connect to Google Maps, right? Uber now has own maps, but there's a reason for that. Grab has its own maps. There's a reason for that. When Uber was using Google Maps, the entire business would die tomorrow if Google Map would cut off their API access to Uber or Lyft or whatever. And Larry was livid. Like, dude, we're getting 20 million a month. They're making, $2 billion a year.
Right.
Why are we not getting any of that money? So maybe they jacked up the prices, and that's probably Uber, when Uber said, let me go build my own maps. Grab realized very early and build their own maps. So what I'm going with this is now we are at a point where founders seem to want to go across boundaries. OpenAI wants to have a consumer business as much as it is a foundation model infrastructure business, as much as it is a data center business because they are getting there, as much as it is a chip business because they're doing that, as much as it is a power business because they want to buy power as well.
Right. They're doing everything.
They're doing everything.
Even on the extreme edge, I think OpenAI also started their own consulting arm for $10 million for the government. So that was very interesting. But I want to flip this a little bit, right? You said that foundational layers, infra, LLMs, data, we are moving faster than product. But now product is outpacing foundation a little bit in certain parts. What does this flip mean for founders right now? And how do you see the CapEx versus OpEx game playing out?
Yeah, so I think it's probably one of the best times to start an application level company. Why is that? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you were, because startups are essentially wars. I mean, you got to fight for attention, you got to fight for dollars, you got to fight for customers, you got to fight for talent, and all of that, right?
You got to fight every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
So if you want to go fight, you want to fight with the best equipment you've got. And if you are fighting in air, you got to have the best engine. I mean, the entirety of this air superiority is based on who can fly faster and shoot from further out.
Correct.
That's literally it, right? Who can target and shoot from further out without getting damaged.
Yeah.
And that requires engine and electronics that is the state of the art, the more advanced than the other party. And that engine and state of the art electronics is what foundation model is intelligence.
Right.
It's horsepower intelligence, right? How quickly, how well, how cheaply, and how effectively can you go decimate your competition? So if you're flying in air with an engine that was produced 2 months ago or 2 days ago, and you're flying in air and you meet somebody else, and this person has gotten the engine 2 hours back, there was so much activity at the engine factory that the next engine was coming out better than the one before, an hour before, a week before, a month before. And sometimes it was much better than that. You have a GPT 2.5 and then 3 and 3.5.
Very interesting.
I mean, the time between these releases was shrinking and the quality was jumping.
Very interesting.
Right? So why would you go into war with an engine knowing that if you were good to go compete, if you're in flight for a month and the next time a flight takes off, it'll be better than you de facto because it's got a better foundation model powering it.
Wow.
You got no chance to win. So now that engine factory, like I said, is reaching an asymptotic number. So there'll be very few of those factories. Many of them died out. Same as car companies. There were 4,000 car companies. Now there are 85 in the world. It's kind of weird how many car companies could exist in the world, but there were 4,000 or 5,000 car companies at one point at the beginning. Everybody wanted to build a foundation model company.
Correct.
But they realized, shit, it's hard to scale.
Yeah.
When I was at Google Cloud, there were at least 10 clouds. I wouldn't believe it. Verizon had a cloud. All the telcos had a cloud. Dell had a cloud. HP had a cloud.
Wow.
They still have a cloud. IBM had a cloud.
Right.
Still have one.
Still have one.
Nobody cares about it, but they still have one. Why? Because HP said, you know what? I got a bunch of compute sitting in my factory inventory. Let me go build a mini cloud and see who wants it.
Yeah.
Telco said, you know what? The most expensive part of this cloud stuff is this network, and I've got a network. Let me go build another part and offer you as a cloud. All these storage companies, EMC said, I have a bunch of storage devices. Let me build a storage cloud. I'm going to be great at storage. I'm going to be okay with everything else.
Right.
None of those worked out.
Right.
Eventually, the general cloud just won out. Same, because it's just hard to scale.
Yeah.
It's hard to scale, hard to raise capital, hard to really keep everything together. Same thing is going to be realized by a lot of the foundation model companies. This is really hard. Maybe it's easy to get started. Easy being relatively. But it's very hard to scale. So now the engine factory is slowing down. Not that many new engines coming every day. In fact, you could also argue that some people are complaining 5.0 is not as good as 4.5 in many cases. Right? There's a big furore about that. That's an indication to you that the engine is slowing down.
Slowing down. Yeah.
Maybe an algorithmic change will make the next one AGI.
Yeah.
We never know. But because the engine is slowing down, you have a chance. Instead of a month to survive in the air, maybe you've got a year and a half. And then you can put a distance between you and the next person, right? You got to be agile, no question about it, but you have a shot. It is a longer shot than it was a year, 2 years back.
Right.
So if you were to time your entry into an application layer today, is a good time.
Oh, amazing. I think that's a very good way to think about it. Very interesting. I think now that we are talking about the application layer, I want to jump into almost creating a founder playbook from this section, right? So how to build. And we've spoken a little bit about railroads versus airlines in terms of infra versus applications. But you've argued that the infra giants will not win every AI application, even if they want to. Like railroads didn't run passenger trains, or Boeing doesn't run airlines. Big tech will dominate infra, but they might not have the muscle to build every specialized application. How do I, as a founder, spot that? Is there even like a way for me to spot that?
It's very hard to spot it. It is extremely hard, which is why you see wave after wave after wave. The incumbents have almost always pivoted and built larger, gotten to become larger and larger. Right? The only time it did not play that way was the crypto way, where the biggest companies or value creators are Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, a few other companies, Coinbase. But there's no incumbent. There's no IBM starting a Coinbase type service, right? So in almost everything else, mobile is owned by Apple, which is a pre-mobile company.
Right.
Internet is owned by, the likes of Microsoft.
Right.
Kind of a little bit like Google, but Google is post-internet, but Microsoft absolutely is pre-internet, right? So it's not clear. It's not easy. It's not clear. What is clear is that you, as a founder, you can move much faster. You can take the kind of risks that the big companies will just never be able to take. And you now finally have a chance to redefine consumer behavior. So there are two times when I think incumbents don't have much of an advantage. One is if the behavior of how people want to interact with things is changing and you recognize it. You can act on it faster, right? And we have had moments where young people want to do things a certain way, and large companies wouldn't be able to service that need. A large company would never build a Tinder. A large company would never build, a Snapchat, right? Disappearing. They will never do that. So you have a shot there. They might acquire you, but they will not be able to build it. Or you have a new form factor that's just like a wild, wild west. A cell phone was a new form, a touch phone was a new form factor. A headphone device could be a new form factor. Or we are still going through a skeuomorphic phase of AI, but there could be a new form factor where people will interact with AI in a very different way. Maybe they will attach something to their bodies and it'll just do stuff for you. Maybe there'll be a small device in every room, like there's a light and there's a camera. Maybe it's an AI device. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
It'll recognize your face, it'll know who you are, it'll know your voice, and it'll just know what you said and versus what I said and what the interaction felt like, and it'll do a bunch of stuff with it, right? You can do that. So those are two ways you can actually build large companies: a new form factor, which is Wild West, or a new behavior. And oftentimes they are tied to each other, right? So that's the advantage that a founder can play on top of, and that's what I think is really interesting. What is the common mistake we see founders make today is that they got this new beautiful resource, this droplet of oil that is so powerful, so beautiful, so elegant, and they want to feed that oil to a horse and say, you know what, why aren't you running faster? Why are you not running faster? I thought oil will do great, but it's a horse.
It's a horse.
So they have to be able to imagine the art of the possible with this new technology, and that requires a very different kind of thinking, abstract thinking, parallel thinking. So what I say is, you got this resource that only comes around every 10, 20, 30 years, sometimes even longer. Don't try to feed oil to the horse. Try to define what a car would look like and feed oil to that, and you will go the distance. You'll have an advantage. There's a funny story about somebody in New York in the 1920s. He had this big, horse carriage company, and he sold all of that because he saw people were trying to reconstruct how the roads would be for cars to pass by.
Right.
And he started having trouble running his cart on those roads.
Interesting.
Because he realized that times are shifting, and his brethren were not that smart, but he sold off his entire horse carriage business and got into cab business. And he probably made a lot more money.
Wow.
So that's what founders need to do.
Correct.
See the, read the tea leaves and see the tailwinds. The tailwinds are not even winds, they're more like breeze or a whiff of air, and then just ride on it.
Got it. I think I want to talk about applications, because I think very apparent from our conversation that the current alpha definitely sits in applications right now, at least if I'm a founder that I'm trying to build something. Any specific verticals, industries, spaces where you feel like applications, there's a big white space there?
Look, 20 years ago, the thesis, if you were to just blindly just say, I want to turn pen and paper businesses into digital businesses, you would make a ton of money. Just a simple thing. If it's pen and paper, find out what turns it from pen and paper to digital.
Digital.
Could be emails, could be fax, could be something else.
Interesting.
Photographs.
Right.
selling stuff,
Right.
DocuSign,
Right.
anything.
Right.
Today, the opportunity is not just intelligence. Like, hey, you know what? This data means this data means that. It's also about, well, what do I do with it? So AI is not there yet, but it's going to get there pretty soon in my view, where for some of the repetitive stuff that doesn't require elements of genius,
Right.
elements of prosody, elements of really instinct.
Right.
AI will be able to start eating into that very quickly. And it's already starting to happen in the rote code bases
Right.
or the basic design work
Right.
or the basic videography or the
Right.
basic audiography
Right.
and so on and so forth. But if you want to beat Ravi Shankar, you better come prepared for that. AI is not going to do it today.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, never know.
Maybe.
Because these asymptotes can be very surprising, right? 0.5% could suddenly make you better than an entire population,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
There's opportunity everywhere. And if you were to have a thesis, it's like, what can I actually do with AI? What can I do end to end in a high quality, in a repeatable way, and where? And go there. That's what we advise. That's what we look for. And I think of AI as, look, AI is not really a software. It's not static. It's actually moving. It's like a bottle of wine. It is always evolving. The moment you open it up, it's aging with you. The more data comes in, it gets smarter. The bad data comes in, it gets dumber. Okay, feedback comes in, it starts to learn from it, and very quickly. And the more feedback, the more people use it, the smarter it might become generally, and smarter it might become specifically for you. And that was never true for software because it was a dead, static algorithm that would do exactly what it's supposed to do for the most part. Because if you were to go really deep into it, it's not exactly as dumb and static as that. But that's how flowcharts and algorithms work. This is a living algorithm. It just adapts with you. So there are two kinds of companies we see, right? What we call an open loop system and a closed loop system. What's an open loop system? An open loop system is an instruction comes in from the left.
Okay.
Let's say pick a company that takes data from a CRM and looks at the rows and the columns and names, email addresses, countries, whatnot.
Phone numbers, yeah.
And it does a bunch of agentic web scraping and figures out, Hemant lives here, does this age, this gender, likes this, dislikes that. And basis that, this AI system in the middle who's taken the value from the name from the CRM, will write a personalized email to me, because the email address is sitting in the CRM, and write it to me. And it'll do it 1 million times in a second. Okay. Now that email goes to HubSpot, because HubSpot understands the marketing campaign.
Correct.
It knows what budgets to spend where, it knows which channel to go to. WhatsApp here.
Correct.
Between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., Hemant looks at WhatsApp.
Right.
Between 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., 9 p.m., he looks at something else. He does not open with this headline, he opens with that. He doesn't open with videos, he opens with text. HubSpot knows all this. And HubSpot sends that email out. It tracks it. It knows what the ROI is. It has no reason to push that data back to this middle AI. It's got no reason to push it back. It keeps it. So this AI doesn't get smarter. It's an open loop. The AI doesn't know. I wrote 1 million emails. What the hell happened to them? Who opened them? Maybe nobody opened them. Do I do any better next time? No. You give me the exact same CRM entries. I'll write the exact same email again. And I'll send it the exact same way again. And you'll get zero response. So it's an open loop. It's still software, so you can still find a way to plug it in, right? But
Fundamentally,
it's an open loop.
Yeah.
It's an NP hard problem. You just don't know where you're going to go with it. You don't know how it converts to a better answer over time, quickly. There are much bigger and more problematic open loops in AI. If you look at chip companies, there are companies that are building LLMs for designing chips, like VHDL and VLSI and all of that. Very interesting stuff. There are companies that are writing LLMs to write assembly code that can be printed on firmware, right? But then let's say you go design a chip that says, you got 5 registers and 5 capacitors and impedance loop there, or whatever power loop there and whatever that. And then you say, what, I'm going to byte code it a bit and we add a few more. It's not going to have enough memory. Let me add a few more memory DIMMs here, a few more memory channels.
Right.
Let me make the, it a bit more deeper. Let me make the CPU registers a bit more deeper so it can do better calculations. Then you add a FPU here and LPU there. And then, it'll just do it for you.
Correct.
Okay? Because it's AI, it knows how to put it all together. And then it goes to Taiwan for fabrication. And then they figure out these registers are put together too closely, so they had heat problems. or this cannot be supported by this power and capacitor, this impedance loop is too hot. So I don't know, stuff like that. And that loop is in the real world. Somebody who's doing a thermal design process, a thermal design of that chip, and it puts it into a motherboard, will figure out it doesn't fit into any motherboard. It's too big. I mean, who closes that loop? A, it is in a different country, and B, it happens 6 months after. You've designed it here. It's not like a loop that closes here.
Correct.
It's a much harder open loop to solve for. So it's very hard to close these loops for AI to learn from. But then there are lots and lots of closed loop systems where AI can actually learn very quickly, and we've invested in a bunch of those. And it just so happens that these closed loops are much more frequent in vertical software. Right? If you were to go do construction software, you were to do procurement software, you were to do healthcare software, or call center or whatever, right? There are only 5-6 steps you do. They're very standardized steps. You go to a hospital, doesn't matter whether you're male, female, old, young, geriatric, infant. It doesn't matter which disease you've got. You've got to fill the same 10 forms. Name, location, address, phenotype, genotype, blood report, this what. Same, it's got different entries, same forms. The steps are all the same. In fact, in some categories, they are legally bound to be the same. You cannot have any modality there, right? So they are more closed loop. You know what the next step would be.
Right.
You know what the entries are, but you know what the next step is, and the next step is, and the next step is. Right? And then you can all bring it together. So the AI can learn faster. And you can get better faster, and then it'll have better ROI quicker versus a horizontal open loop system, which is very hard to prove ROI. So that's the challenge we start to see in AI, where ROI is hard to prove the more open loops you have in the system. And they're not just one, there could be hundreds of open loops. Even in a closed loop, technically closed loop system, you will have 5 or 6 places where stuff is leaking out.
Still out, yeah.
Right? People are feeling something about your platform and they don't tell you. That's an open loop of UI, UX. It's in their brain. You don't know what is not working. AI will send a response, a design response, or a UI or UX, and you don't like it. You make a face.
Correct.
AI doesn't know. You don't like it. You tell it. It's an open loop technically, right? So stuff like that is where I think the challenges are, and we're going to have to get to a point where these skeuomorphic ways of AI become more almost like, you can interact with it much more easily. So the loops can be closed much more quickly, and it'll start to become.
You've also said that closed loop will always have better defensibility and moats, right?
I think defensibility and moat we should just throw out as a jargon word, because there is no defensibility when you have a force as powerful as this, right? The only real defensibility is probably in having some sort of a regulatory capture or capital capture, because it's very hard to capture regulation. It's very hard to capture dollars, big dollars.
Right.
Otherwise, everything else is anybody's game at this point in time.
I want to jump on 2 or 3 core aspects. Probably, I think on a tweet that you've written, right? You've written that you've advised founders to stay close to their markets from day zero and to master storytelling. And this comes to being more around distribution, right? I think you also recalled AMD's dual core technically superior, but Intel won that on distribution, right? And narrative. So if I'm an AI founder, how do I think about GTM so that I don't repeat the same mistakes?
Look, I mean, without a great product, there is no reason to have a GTM. What often happens in India is that Indian founders tend to build great products, but they don't have the muscle to have great GTM. So they take the easy way out. You know what? Let me open source it, because they don't really have to have
I don't take the effort.
Sales and marketing and branding, and who cares? Let me do open source. Let me see what happens.
Let me see what happens.
My friends in the open source community will adopt it, and maybe I'll have a bunch of GitHub stars, and I'll do a product hunt launch and a Hacker News break, and then maybe I'll get somewhere, or I'll do a PLG. It's fine. I don't need to sell anything. But that's the problem. I actually think great founders are, in their essence, are great stories. People just haven't seen yet. They haven't experienced it yet. They haven't touched it yet. But great founders are great stories before they are anything else. They're stories that they tell themselves. Either they're born into it, or they somehow live it in their own minds. And if you are able to experience it, it makes investing very easy. Because there are so few stories that are absolutely great. And it'll make the hair on the back of your neck kind of stand up, and you hear a great story. We are we are a generation of, we are not a generation, as a species, we are great storytellers.
100%.
Indians we have had a vocal language, a language that transitioned between generations just pure orally.
Correct.
So we are essentially storytellers, but we've lost the art over the last 500 years, maybe more. And this is true for probably majority of society, right? But great founders, great humans are great stories before they end up, stepping into their greatness. And the same is true for great companies. Great companies start as a kernel of truths, and a kernel of truths that is applicable to a lot of people. And these kernels of truths are usually great stories. That's why it sounds like, I could have done that. Uber, from A to B, anything. A can be city and a different city. Within the same city, A could be Earth and B could be on the moon. And Uber will solve for it. Right? That's what their vision is, to solve something to go from A to B. Right. It is humans, and it's mostly on the same country today, A to B, same city.
Right.
Tomorrow it could be different countries.
Correct.
And humans and packages. And day after it could be humans and different planets.
Correct.
And looks like Elon might get there faster. But they're all great stories in the beginning. But they have to be told. The world has no time to come ask you, what's the greatest thing about you, man? Tell me. I have a lot of time. Nobody's going to ask you. If you really have a great story, a great product, you've got to be able to learn how to tell that story really well, because the reality of the world is 9 people out of 10 will not say something good about you, and the 10th one will say it badly.
Right.
So you've got to own your story and tell it in an authentic way,
Right.
powerful way. And Indians don't grow up today saying that. We don't go and sell lemonade on the neighborhood stand when we are growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
We don't even have a BBA program.
Correct.
We have an MBA program.
Right.
We don't even teach sales and marketing in India at the bachelor level. Teach it at the master's level. In the US, they've got this.
You seem like someone who's very natural at storytelling, by the way, Hemant. Is there some things that have shaped the way you storytell? Are there books that you've done, maybe people that you've met? If I'm a founder typically, and I feel like I don't have the craft of storytelling really well, how do I make it better? How do I become better and better at storytelling?
Look, you can't, again, it goes back to the product. If you don't have good stories, you can't
fake it.
tell good stories.
Yeah.
And if you have good stories, the rest of it is style and apparatus. It's not the content, it's the apparatus around the content. And to have good stories, you've just got to be able to take risks. Okay, you've got to do what's hard to do. You got to run towards hard problems. My story, I grew up with a massive amount of stammer. I couldn't speak properly.
Really?
For the majority of my life, half of my life, I couldn't talk properly.
Wow.
But then I began reading poetry, and I would start reciting poetry in front of the mirror. I would wake up at 4 a.m. and the house is quiet. I will stand in front of the mirror in the bathroom and I'll speak poetry to myself, because somehow I learned that when I would recite poetry in school, I would have a lot less trouble, because it would have the rhythm, it will have the meter to it. It's predictable, what word is coming next. So once you start getting better at something like that, you start to read a lot of poetry. And poetry essentially, what is the art of storytelling? Essentially, it's the art of summarizing things that essentially resist summary. That's the art of storytelling. Things that do not want to be summarized. If you're able to summarize it, you are a good storyteller. And oftentimes what's hard to summarize is emotion. How do you feel? How did you feel when you wrote something? If you wrote about loss, you wrote about grief, why should I care? I haven't sensed loss. I haven't sensed your grief. Your grief is your grief. The world doesn't care about your grief. I care about my grief. But the ability to sort of say it in a way that you can, great poems are great emotional transfer vehicles.
Right. They're capturing.
When you have to say it, you have to not almost, it's almost like you can't look at a star when you're looking at it directly. You can't talk about grief by talking about, I am sad. Nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
People care about the thing around the thing. So, and there has to be some beauty and elegance to it. There has to be some abstraction to it to land it well.
Right.
And the reader completes the story. I will have my own grief, and I'll read about your grief, and I will connect to mine, not to yours. Connect to mine. But in that moment, we are together. I know what you felt. Okay, and that's a great story for me. That will impact me. I'll remember that. There are poems I read 20 years ago. I still remember. Right. So to be able to tell great stories, you have to find a way to live a story-worthy life. And personally for me, that has been the ability to do the hard thing and take chances. And I frankly haven't taken enough. I regret that. But take chances and take risks. So if you do enough of those, you will have something unique to say anyway. And that itself is the content of a great story. And in which language you tell it, where you tell it from, how you tell it, which accent, it would matter a lot less, let me tell you that. And if you have that as well, then you become world class. Any story would be far more powerful if Morgan Freeman is reciting it.
Right, 100%.
Or Amitabh Bachchan.
Yeah, for sure.
Or Gulzar.
Yeah.
Right. So
I want to talk about like speed. AI in general is moving at a speed that honestly I have never seen. Like at least it feels like the speed is almost too fast, right? Which means that if the market is moving so fast in terms of like you building products and like the speed at which companies run also need to be fast. You've spoken about speed being a moat. So I have two questions for you. If you're building an AI right now as a company, what is like a benchmark for speed for you? If you can give me some examples. And have you seen speed as in the recent times come out as like a big unfair advantage for companies? So two questions there. One is primarily around like what's a benchmark for speed for you? And number two is, can you tell me a few examples where speed is shown to be an unfair advantage?
Yeah. So I've written about this before where I think speed is probably one of the greatest moats within which lie all other moats.
You did tweet about it, yeah.
And what I mean by that is it's not just like mindlessly thrashing your way around and trying to run at some summit that you think is the right summit.
Right.
When most of the time you are sitting in the middle, you're kind of dropped in the middle of an ocean. The moment you say, I'm going to start a company, boom, you've been transported in the middle of an ocean.
Okay.
Everybody's trying to struggle and figure out where to go, and nobody cares about saving you because it's not their job.
Right.
They got their own boats. The boats are called Meta, Facebook, and all that stuff, right? So they're happy. They're having a party there. But it's not their boat. It's not the destination they may want to go, and you have a shot at getting to the destination you want to go, but you are right now have to survive. So there, I think you've got to first figure out which direction to go pick. And frankly, in some spaces, the direction is easier to find than not. And then everybody is swimming towards that direction. Okay. And then if you're not the fastest swimmer, pardon the pun, but you won't be the first one there. And it's not necessary that the first mover advantage actually lasts. It is not. It frankly is not. If you look at the data big data wave from 2010, 12, a variety of companies. Looker was there, got acquired by Google for a couple of $1 billion, and compared to the size of that market, it's kind of peanuts. Talent was there and a few others. Snowflake came 4 or 5 years later, and Databricks came 5-6 years later. So it's not like speed and getting to somewhere first is the only advantage. But through speed, you get information back. The moment for me, speed is less about just your manager sort of sleeping at midnight and telling you, can you do this? And waking up at 6 and have you done this?
Right.
That's mindless. It's about this sense of urgency that permeates your body that tells you, you know what, if I don't do this, I will, somebody else will. I won't get the glory. I won't be the first one to say, this is my flag and it's the only flag on this ground, maybe for another hour, but it's me. You won't get that. And that sense of urgency has to permeate all the way from the founder level to the first employee level, right? And that loses fidelity by almost 30% each layer down. By the time you've gone to 3-4 layers below, it's kind of lost its entire. So you have to start at 300%. to maintain fidelity of 100%, 4 layers below. And big companies, is impossible. So that's what I mean by speed. It's a sense of purpose and ambition and clarity of goal and the sense of urgency that tells you, I've got to go get it done. Otherwise somebody else will, and it'll not be my prize. There's no second prize in some of these games. Have I seen value in it? If you apply speed to the right direction, almost velocity, not speed, for the nerds in the group, scalar versus vector, you have a lot higher chance of success. This again, like famous examples. Jeff Bezos had one of the interns was working with Jeff Bezos, and they had the idea of Amazon Prime. Okay, first of all, that itself is awesome. But then that idea, I think, was orchestrated and kind of figured out right before Christmas.
Okay.
Sometime December. And I wrote about that, and the person who actually did that project tweeted about it right below me and said, I was the guy who did that. I'm going to find out. I think his name is Ravi something.
Okay. We'll find that.
Anyway, and on Christmas Eve, Bezos calls 5 or 6 of his lieutenants to his private, estate, and then they sit through the Christmas break all the way to design the Prime program, design economics of it, the branding of it, positioning of it, launching of it, productization, team, engineering, backend, whatever, right? Relationships with people that want to participate in Prime, the vendors that want to sell through Prime versus not, and benefits, cost. 7 days later, they had a plan ready. I think it launched early January, so less than a month after the first meeting at Bezos. They launched Prime, maybe not globally, but in a fairly large US market, and then they saw it through. I mean, can you do that now in any company? 21 days to launch a massive product that is, I think, a massive revenue winner for them. Great. Famous example recently, Elon Musk building this entire data center.
Yes.
100,000 GPUs.
Amazing.
I mean, I've seen photographs of that place, and he's basically gotten these big trucks with the generators in the background running fans to cool it out, because he could not find the municipality to give permissions to dig up the trenches to put pipes to get proper AC with liquid cooling and all that. He just screw it, let's do it like this.
Yeah, it's an entire city built up almost.
Yeah, right. So again, be careful about the direction you pick, but once you know where you're headed, and it's the Mecca, is the promised land, you got to run. Without clarity, you can't run.
You said that India needs to build, because, like, for example, if we only keep consuming foreign AI, we'll pay rent for decades. If you can explain in like the next 2 to 3 minutes why India must choose to build, how would you explain it?
Okay. I think if I were to zoom out, we are entering a pretty interesting geopolitics cycle in the world right now. Okay. Maybe something, and this today is a good example of a shooting in the US for somebody who just voiced his opinions in public, right? What's happening in Nepal right now? What's happened with India and Pakistan? What's happening with India and the US on the tariff side? What's happening with Japan and China? What's happening with Japan Prime Minister had to step down. France Prime Minister had to step down yesterday or day before. I mean, look, these are things that are all happening too soon, all at the same time. I don't know who it was who said this. A great economist said this, that when a change is latent, it is going to happen. People pick the person who's going to bring the change about faster. This happened in the 1920s. 1930s with Germany. It happened in the 80s with Soviet Union. People pick the person that brings about the change in a very polarizing way, but brings about a change and accelerates it. We are going through that globally right now. And we are at a point where over-reliance on critical things, on regions and markets, will become a lot harder than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's not everything. There will certainly be alliances built and bridges strengthened, and maybe new bridges being built now. But certainly I think we are entering in a more suspicious phase of society. And sometimes these phases last. They build up into a crescendo, and then a big release happens, and then they come back out. But we are probably building towards a crescendo now. It's an ominous thing to say, but that's what I feel like. Okay. And then there are certain things that India needs to have its own capability around. From the very bottom, water, power, and energy, and things like that. Food sustainability, power sustainability, water sustainability. We've got to have that. If you're depending on that on some other country, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
And then you go a layer above that. Things that you manufacture. What do you want to manufacture? What do you want to produce? Where you are self-sustaining. 40 years ago, food was that. Green revolution happened.
Correct.
We are self-sustaining in food.
Yes.
Today, we don't produce
Yes.
a ton of stuff that we should be.
Yes.
Can go down the list, right?
Yes.
Some of them are very important and critical. Some of them are not.
Yeah.
On the very important and critical stuff, batteries, motors, defense equipment, certain kind,
Correct.
satellites,
Correct.
GPS, chips, bio, right? And there is a long list beyond that. But we need to be able to manufacture those. And the rest of the stuff, it's fine, somebody else produces the screws. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay, somebody else produces the iPhones. It's okay. But we've got to own the communication channels. We've got to have satellites with telecom on top. We can't rely on different countries' satellites for GPS, INS, whatever. So that's how then you kind of build up from above and above and above that. And you can come to the application layer. Application layer has other challenges. Google Play is not a national thing. It's a US thing.
Yeah.
Apple, is not. So there are a bunch of things where even in the application layer, you're not fully in control of a lot of things. So what I believe is you kind of, if you systematically build it up from the ground to the top, your ceiling, you'll find there are a lot of things that, it's fine. Somebody else can do it. That big farm that produces the specialized Shimla mirch and, broccoli, fine. We can import it.
Yeah.
But we cannot import rice. We cannot import
fundamentals.
Right. Maybe, oil.
Yeah. Right.
So stuff like that.
Got it.
So, and then when you go to software, we do believe in the idea of sovereign AI. AI is getting fragmented across the world. It's one of the third superpowers in the world, right? It'll be US, China, and maybe AI. And industrialization was the first superpower, and then whoever honed it and owned it became the next superpower. AI is the next superpower generator. Whoever owns it, will become the next superpower. So we've got to be able to hone it and own it. And that fragmentation begins at the chip layer, even below the chip layer, the fab layer, right? So fabs we don't own, packaging we don't own, chips we don't own. We don't design, we have designers, but design is just, it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You got to put it in practice.
Yeah.
So we don't own the manufacturing capabilities. We don't, own a bunch of stuff around that. So we've got to be able to own things like that. And it's hard to do.
Correct.
Because just to build a fab in India, you'll require 10 billion gallons of clean water.
Wow.
Where are you going to go get that? You're going to have to have uninterrupted power forever. How are you going to get that? You're going to have earthquake proofing. You're going to have clean rooms and trained staff. We got to build all of that. So I do think there is value in building some of these fundamental layers. But that's not always all a founder's job. A lot of this comes down to policy and governments to fund it and build it. On the upper layers, why does India need to build a Google or a Meta? Like, frankly, in the large scheme of things, if you don't build the next Google, I'm okay. I'm fine. Like, it's a point of pride, but it's not something that I think India needs to focus on for the next 10 years. We need to focus on more fundamentally important things. Manufacturing index is super low. R&D index is 0.7% of GDP. It has to be at least 3 to 5% in the next 10 years. I don't know, like, we're not building cutting edge technologies of any kind beyond a certain sectors, right? And they're in there, like, there are few founders, few and far between. We need to build the capability from the ground up. And then in 10 years, 15 years, you will see results. But we can't see results and go navigate our way to it. China didn't do that, right? If you look at the Chinese strategy, in the 90s, they began this 1,000 mind project. Even Israel had that. They call it a Yeshua project.
Okay.
I think it was called Yeshua or something like that.
What was
and
it?
The idea was that, for Israel, it was like get the Jews back to Israel and then build with them in Israel. And they were oftentimes very technical people. Maybe they were writers and poets and singers and all of that, but they were many technical people.
Right.
And they began bringing them back to, they had free tickets and all that, and they built capacity for them, and they had jobs for them, and they built it out. The government funded all of that. China has been doing it since the 90s. They've been trying to get strong Chinese researchers from different parts of the world back to China. But they don't just leave them there, they coach them. They convince them. If you come, you will get this amount of capital, you will get a lab named after you, you will get 20 students, and you will get free hand for the next 10 years to do R&D that you want to do, and then we'll see. That's what they did.
Correct.
And that's why in the last 10 years, 5 years, almost feels like China went into a cave
Yeah.
and suddenly came out with infinite power,
Correct.
infinite energy,
Yeah.
infinite intelligence.
Yeah. But how did they land there?
Yeah.
Let's talk about unique Indian advantages and data being one of them. I think you mentioned earlier also, and you've also spoken about this. You've highlighted Bollywood, T-Series, call center data sets as structural advantages. What's the real opportunity here?
Yeah, look, I mean, data, like I said earlier, there are 3 immutable laws of scaling in AI. The algorithmic scaling, and that requires a certain kind of talent that needs to come back and build in India. We have some of it, but we need a ton more of that. Nobody could argue that.
Yeah.
Then there is compute, which is expensive, and we're doing a bit of that with India AI project, and they're doing a great job. And then there is the data in the middle. And in the absence of great talent and great compute, data would not be as useful, but it certainly provides a lot of value as it stands today because we have some talent and some compute. Data will accelerate that and get more value out of it. And we are an open market. Okay, we're not like China where it's a closed market. We're an open market. India should be able to trade with any country in the world. We've got the largest corpus of human data, and we should be able to capture some really interesting biological, knowledge from that to benefit the world. It'll stay in India. It'll be sovereign to India. But an Indian company that has access to Indian genetic data or phenotype data, population scale data, maybe government funded, but we have the volumes.
Yeah, we have the volume.
Right? So why not?
Yeah.
Right? Now, who's doing that? We have one of the world's largest corpus of call center data, audio, emails, text, and all of that.
Yeah.
Somebody should be able to go build a company around that. We would love to fund those companies. We've got an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
India's BPO industry is $40-50 billion, right? A ton of that is essentially BPOs that service healthcare providers in the US. And we've got a bunch of data around that. We have funded a couple of companies there from India going to the world. There are companies there's about a $30 billion market in India for solving accounting problems in the US because accounting is very tough. Chartered accounting is a very difficult exam, and they're aging out of, we're above 50 years. The majority of them are above 50, and nobody is entering that. There's all of other opportunities there. So they're aging out, and they're pushing a lot of work back to India. And frankly, Gujarat seems to be a big hub. Ahmedabad has a massive hub of these BPOs. Somebody should be able to build a company around solving for that, through AI. And we have invested in a company recently around that, and so on and so forth. Audio data, like why is India not going to produce a Suno? We invested in Suno in the US, but there is a lot of classical music that could be built out of India using Indian classical data, and there are companies that are trying to do that here. So there should be these companies. And
You've also highlighted Bollywood specifically.
Bollywood has one of the largest corpus of video data, right? It's much bigger than Hollywood. So if you were to go build a video gen company, you should have, there's a company I think in the US that is collaborating with Hollywood studios to actually do this, build a foundation model for video generation. Somebody should think about that and collaborate with, a large Bollywood media house.
Yeah. We do lack in R&D though. I think you've highlighted this. Like right now, we spend just 0.7% of GDP on R&D versus 2.4% in China, 3.5% in the US. If you had like 2 or 3 things, what would you say, like what can India do better to build a robust R&D ecosystem?
It's a very difficult problem. I don't have a good answer.
Why is it difficult?
Because in the 60s or 50s, India separated teaching institutes from R&D centers.
India separated the teaching institutes from R&D.
The funding is different. Okay, TIFR has a small teaching center. Okay. That's where a lot of research happens.
Okay.
But in IIT is where majority of the students go. The ISCs is a research institute with a small teaching arm.
Okay.
AIMS is one of the only few colleges which is a teaching college.
Okay.
Right? But in the US, if you go, majority of these labs and the teaching institutes are in the under the same roof. MIT has CSAIL and a bunch of other robotics labs, and Berkeley has Bear Lab and used to be called AMP Lab and Rise Lab, and Stanford has AI Lab and 5 other labs, and they all work together. Even in the medical business, like you look at Palo Alto Medical has a actual hospital you can go to as a patient, and it's got a bunch of students who learn there, who teach there, and learn go there as kind of college. And there is Mass General in Massachusetts. There's Harvard Medical. It's actually called Harvard Medical School.
Yeah.
But it's actually a real hospital.
Yeah.
What hospital can you call out in India, which is also a teaching school? There are very few of those. Okay? So we separated out funding for educational institutes to research.
Why did that happen?
It was a policy decision taken by the Prime Minister back then. I don't know what the reasons for that is, but what that led to is incentives didn't align anymore. Students go to these schools to study, and then some of the students go there to do R&D, but they're not combined.
Right.
Okay, and as a result of that, now 50, 60, 70, 80 years later, it's just very hard to then go, and we have tried to build bridges. There are obviously labs in all the IITs and NITs and BITS, and I'm sure all of the colleges have some collaboration with some industrial body, but it's just not as tight as it could be, right?
Because so many educational institutes, like if a policy change comes to kind of merge these or like at least go back on that decision, it would be a very positive change,
Imagine if TIFR was like a top engineering college. What would that look like to India? Imagine if Indian Institute of Science had a 10,000 population, undergrad students going there, not people who are trying to do their PhD.
Correct.
So that would look very different for us. But that's how it looks like in the US. When I went to the US, I went for a PhD, didn't really finish it, but I was sitting in the same lab as master students, the same lab as the bachelor students. In IITs, that's not the case.
That's not the case. Sad. All right, let's jump into your investments as well. You've invested in space tech, that's Pixxel. SarvamAI also early on. Can you explain what's happening in those spaces? Let's start with Pixxel, because space tech is a really interesting space right now.
Yeah, it's one of the areas that we saw coming in very early. One of the sovereign capabilities India needs to have to be able to launch things into space and build things that survive space and do stuff in space. Across telecom, earth imaging, and surveillance, and defense, and all of that. So when you say what is happening in space, I would say, at least in India, you could divide space segment into stuff that happens in the ground, on the ground, stuff that happens in the middle, and stuff that happens in space. And the ground is all the ground station work. It's telecoms, the teleoperators, the ground station that coordinate launches, and there's a bunch of propellants, a company that build propellants that get fitted into vehicles and so on, and there's a bunch of software companies that build operating systems for these things and all that. In the middle is rocket companies that push stuff into space, and there's the stuff that happens in space is mostly satellite related. And there are things, if you divide that into different categories, there are satellites that do imaging, and there are different subsegments, hyperspectral, multispectral, RGB.
Hyperspectral, multispectral.
Yeah, just how many spectrums can you capture with an image? The visible light is 7 spectral bands, but then there are hundreds of bands you can capture. Invisible light, infrared and ultraviolet are just the adjacent bands to the visible light, but then there are hundreds of them that are beyond that. There are bands that figure out chemical composition of a white plume of smoke, and it'll figure out whether it's really steam and harmless or it's full of phosphorus and some other harmful chemical. It'll look at a photograph of a water body and tell you what is the chemical composition of an oil spill.
Interesting.
Or, I don't know, methane emission from the lake body and stuff like that. So that's the imaging category, and there is spectral imaging, infrared imaging, IR imaging, and so on and so forth. Then there's telecom, which is a much larger segment, but it's very heavily regulated for obvious reasons. You don't want everybody to go start sending signals from space and all that, right? So, and telecom is Starlink, and there's a bunch of other players here. That's another segment there. And then there is other stuff that's coming around, which is almost like building a map for space for you to know where things are, and where if you have a break if you have a accident in space, the debris kind of flies around to track it. Or there are things that are almost like tugboat your way next to a asset in space and fix it. If there is a screw loose or a power outlet that is not working, so the satellite is dead. It's a $30 million satellite. You can pay somebody $1 million to go navigate its way to next to your satellite and arrange it accordingly and rotate around the satellite the right way, and then go with a robotic arm, go fix a screw.
And there's opportunities in all of these spaces right now. Okay.
Yeah, we've seen very interesting companies doing all of these things now from India.
And can you tell me about like the SarvamAI investment as well?
Sarvam was part of the sovereign thesis. So like we said, India needs sovereign capabilities in certain things, not everything.
Right.
Semiconductor is one. You need to have sovereign capabilities. AI is one. And space is another one.
Right.
Defense, parts of defense we should be sovereignizing. Parts of it we can buy.
Right.
And so on and so forth. Manufacturing, and it can go industrial, on the industrial side, it can go different places. So some of these are really necessary to have sovereign. If you were to think about what would if Indian government were to go build a model that they can use to do defense-related searches, what model are they going to use? DeepSeek? No. They're not going to use OpenAI.
Correct.
They're not going to use Anthropic, Mistral, right? They're going to use Sarvam.
Yeah.
They don't have a choice. They're not going to use even Google.
Right.
They're not going to use Gemini.
Right.
Nothing. So they need a sovereign model for that. If you want to build an air-gapped system that does really secretive work of any kind, what model are you going to use? You're going to have to use a local sovereign model.
Correct.
Sarvam is going to be that.
Right.
The challenge with India is that it's not a sophisticated market to be able to take any technology and adopt it. The startups are sophisticated. The new age companies are sophisticated, but the old age is not.
Yeah.
They're getting there. The Indian banks are actually quite sophisticated compared to US banks even. They're really great adopters of technology, but it's not as widespread as it needs to be to build large companies. So for an India company servicing AI in India, it's going to be a combination of a bit of OpenAI that does some fundamental research, but not a lot because it's going to be very costly. But you do enough to put a distance between you and a different player.
Correct.
Either in this market or globally, but more importantly in this market. And then you got to build a Palantir-like motion, right? A very Palantir-like forward-deployed engineer motion where you are actually having very heavy account control on the Gov side. You know how to navigate Gov and policy. You know people how to sell into Gov. You know how to manage those relationships. So there's a large. I can't talk more about that, but there are companies, there are organizations within the government that are spending $400 million a year on software spend.
Wow.
$400 million a year.
Wow.
Okay. And you could go take that. And there's appetite to spend and there's ROI.
Yeah, if it's 400 million, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a massive pool of revenue. This is just one org. And it's one of the mid-sized to smaller orgs.
Interesting.
Okay. And then there is enterprises. But the enterprises in India want to be driving AI transformation projects from the board level down. So what Sarvam does, all the board members and all the large organizations, we get called into those meetings. And we are driving, we're not doing, hey, here's a product and you go buy an API and you build. No, that's not going to work. I mean, other people will do that job.
Right.
That's not what we are focused on. We are absolutely focused on the absolute $500,000 to $1 million account plus. It can eventually grow into $2 to $3 million per year. Okay, large transformation projects, massive. So India, successful India AI company like Sarvam would have a OpenAI plus a Palantir plus a Capgemini Accenture-like motion, right? At scale. Maybe 1,000, 2,000 people org.
Correct.
60-70% would be the consulting, service and delivery, and forward deployment engineers and solution architects, and 10 to 20% core R&D, and the remaining would be software engineers, product, marketeers, and so on. That's how I think it'll eventually play out for success. And that's not, so we want to be actually in the consideration set purely Sarvam or Google or Microsoft or Amazon. That's it.
That's it.
So everywhere we go, that's the consideration set for us. And in government, there is no consideration set beyond us.
Very interesting. Can you tell me some other spaces that you folks are investing in that is like very interesting? I think you also spoke about a drone company. So we just want to understand really good spaces that you folks are investing in or things that you really find interesting right now.
Yeah, so we are looking at, so we invested in a drone company called Airbound. They have built one of the world's, actually it is right now the world's most advanced, what is called fixed wing, blended body, vertical takeoff drone. We invested in this founder, one meeting right after this podcast. when he was 17 years old.
Wow.
And he'd been doing it since he was 14.
Wow.
Okay. He had an admit from Purdue, I think.
Okay.
And he dropped out of that, didn't even go, and then he kept building it. And he had to take his mother's permissions to actually invest in the company because he was not legally allowed to
Oh, wow.
hold a director role.
That must be a first.
It was a first for us, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ritesh at Oyo, he was 19 when we invested, so
Right.
that was a first. This was younger than him,
Okay.
and now he's 19. So what he's doing is he's essentially broken apart what it takes to build a drone, and he's building it ground up. And the entirety of the drone industry has used carbon fiber to build drones.
Correct.
And they are a bit heavier, they're expensive.
Carbon fiber is heavier.
Yeah, but this guy's done is a lot better than that.
Okay.
Excuse me. He's built it out of composites.
Okay.
And composites are hard because they seem like they need to be custom built and they got to be heat treated. They have very strong tensile strength. They cannot be stretched, but they don't have. I mean, they don't have shear strength.
Right.
So, he actually had to build the entirety of the manufacturing process to put composites
Wow.
into a drone and make it lightweight. So his drones without the electronics weigh 200 to 300 grams.
200 to 300 grams.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've been to his lab, and if you take the drone and you throw it, it just actually floats down like this.
Wow.
Feels like that. And with the electronics, it'll be a couple of kgs.
Wow.
And the challenge with drone is that a 2-3 kg drone is amazing. People love that. Okay, but it cannot carry anything.
Correct.
Most drones are 15 kgs, 20 kgs, and they carry 2 or 3 kgs.
Right.
This drone can carry about half of its own weight, 1.5
Half
kg.
of its own weight. Wow.
And soon it'll carry about the same weight as its own weight.
That's amazing.
And we think we can carry up to 3 kgs in the next iteration next year.
Wow.
So once you are able to, at that, and these things cost just $3,000 today at subscale, but at scale it'll cost probably 2 to 3, maybe 1 to 2 grand, compared to 15 to 20 grand with the other drones because they are much more, harder to build and bulkier. So that's one innovation that he has done that's quite interesting and world class.
Very interesting.
Second innovation he's done is this ability to take off vertically, so you don't need any ground space, you can land anywhere, and then autonomously and gyroscopically go into a horizontal flight path and then go glide.
Oh.
So the other drones like the DJI drones, a
Right.
bunch of those, they have rotors, right? So
Yeah.
the rotors are actually quite an inefficient way to fly a drone
Okay.
because they got to be consistently rotating.
Right.
So they don't have, so either they have to have very big batteries, which adds a lot of weight,
Yeah.
or they don't have range, so you can't go beyond
Correct.
a few kilometers, miles,
Correct.
or whatever. So what he's been able to do with, he's got to have a very small battery because he's gliding. It takes a lot less energy to glide. He can go 60 kilometers.
Launches like a drone and flies
Launches
like a plane.
like a vertical and then flies like a plane.
Wow.
That's the innovation. That's what a blended wing body drone looks like. So he's got rotors to launch, and then they shut up and it goes into horizontal glide path, and he can cover 60 kilometers right now in a single charge.
Amazing.
So that gives him a lot of range.
Right.
So those two innovations put together almost can bring the cost of a delivery down from 40, 50 rupees in India to sub 10 rupees.
Yeah.
And in the US, the cost of delivery is $15, $10, $15 oftentimes, right? With tips and all of that.
Yeah.
It can bring it down to $1 less.
These are great bets. I think you've also argued that private capital markets should go beyond just like the safe, typical consumer tech and fund deep tech risk. I think this is like one of a good examples of that. Where do we stand today in the ecosystem?
So we need more of these founders to come out. We're in another company called Exponent Energy, which is doing 5-minute fast charging.
Okay.
And world first, like you can charge an entire bus in 5 minutes.
An entire bus in 5 minutes?
Yes, that's the goal. Right.
Wow.
So if you're able to do that, then you basically solve the charging infrastructure problem because you don't have to stand in line.
Correct.
At almost the same time as it needs
Fueling,
to take yeah, right. So these bets, they have a very deep J curve in our business, what we call a J curve. They kind of go deep into a lab mode for 3-4 years and nothing really happens.
Okay.
And when they come out, you better have built something that the world really wants. Okay, the answers to infinite energy or cheap, AI or whatever. So with Pixxel, it was the hyperspectral camera. In 2019, there was an innovation in the material science which could bring 2 elements, and I think it's nickel and some other material I don't remember. But then you could have you can miniaturize the hyperspectral camera, which used to look very, very big and heavy, into a small nano satellite shaped kind of camera with much less weight and dimensions. And then everything became easier. Not just that it's smaller, it's cheaper to build. It's much more lighter weight, so it's cheaper to send up because you are charged per kg to send stuff into space. And if it crashes, you don't lose much capex-wise, so you can raise more money and experiment much faster, right? So the loop of feedback is much faster.
Very interesting.
And it had much higher SWOT, so you could cover a lot more area. So you need fewer satellites. So something like that, you need to sort of think about what is this net new de novo thing that I'm able to do if I'm successful in building it. For Pixxel, it was like you could capture the Earth with just a dozen or two satellites versus hundreds, and you could capture it in 1/10 the price and service the market, fill the market with hyperspectral data, and then you will create interesting things. With Airbound, they want to basically bring the cost of last mile to zero. I'm telling him, if you bring it to zero, the TAM goes to zero. So don't bring it to zero, but bring it as low as you possibly can, so Jevon's paradox can actually play out, right?
Correct.
With Exponent Energy, it's like bringing the cost as well as the time to recharge, and basically remove range anxiety in batteries. So there are companies like that that take these bets, and they have to go deep, and then they have to come out with something really innovative.
Geo's entering the AI space. What's your take on that? What do you think their end game is?
Actually, I don't know what Geo's end game is. I don't know whether they are really entering the AI space. They're certainly entering the data center space.
Interesting.
Right? They are doing a partnership with OpenAI, is what I remember reading. Whether they go all the way into, I know they have a foundation model company. I don't really know whether it's an internal thing which makes their other products better or whatever, versus actually offering it as a service.
Right.
We'll see how that plays out.
Got it. Let's get into evaluating founders. I think we've covered a lot about like India and what to build. What's your yes and no list, right? So let's say if I'm pitching my AI startup to you, what are the things that get you to say yes versus no?
Oh, it's like actually a very tough question. It's a very tough question because like evaluating people is one of the hardest things in this job, because you got to be able to evaluate their motivations. Where are they coming from, right? What do they really want to do? Are they tourists, right? Are they really, going to really build a religion around their company? And it's very hard to really evaluate. So you got to really go dig in. Like I said before, great founders are great stories before they actually are stepping into their own stories. So really trying to dig into what is the great story about them.
It's a core motivation.
What is a core motivation? And it's a tumultuous path. And if you ask it too bluntly, they will shut. They'll shut down. So you got to ask around the problem space a little bit. So it's an art that some people do really well, some people don't. And that's what we focus a lot on, especially in these kind of categories where there's a massive prize to be won at the end of the rainbow. You got to really figure out, can this person go climb the hill and find the edge of the rainbow or not? And that is such a complicated thing.
Correct.
Even the greatest founders sometimes lose steam.
Right.
Somebody passes away during COVID, life goal changes.
Yeah.
Have a child, life goal changes.
Yeah.
Have a problem, health problem, life goal changes. It's fine. It happens to the best of us. But at that moment, you've got half an hour to an hour to evaluate whether you want to spend more time or not. To be able to instinctually have a lock-in with their ambition is what we focus a lot of our time on. So there's no yes or no. We have invested in companies with zero product. Sarvam was an example of that. It's 2 people. No product, raising a large 14 million seed round, which we led, because we spent a lot of time understanding their motivation. And you could see it. Vivek had spent all of his career, 13 years, taking no salary because he really wanted to solve population scale problems in India, and he built out the biometrics for Aadhaar. And that says something about you and what you feel about building for population scale problems in India, for India, from India. Pratyush, when we ref checked him, Satya Nadella wrote an email about him saying, congratulations on starting Sarvam and let us know what we can do for you.
Wow.
His repo in the company was so high. Satya himself heard about the company starting up and personally wrote an email to Pratyush. So he was like the top 1% of 1% across Microsoft research in India and in the US in Redmond. And when you put these 2 people together, it felt like, you could go the distance. Nothing is going to deter them. What are they going to do with their life? Except this. They spent their entire life already doing this.
Right.
Pratyush was already doing Bhashini, is already doing AI for Bharat.
Right.
He was already solving population scale problems in India, for India. the biggest risk I have with Awais at Pixxel is not that he's going to start an AI company because AI is hot, or a crypto company because crypto is going to be hot tomorrow.
Yeah.
If he does anything else, he's going to start another space company.
Yeah.
Or he might escape to space and to Mars with Elon. That's the biggest risk we've got with a guy like that, right? So you want to, and it's not necessarily everybody has to be that, but you got to see their motivation below the motivation, below the motivation, and understand where it's coming from and what is the root of it, what is the essence of it, what is powering them, right? The chip on the shoulder, people call it, but it's very hard to really recognize that. So what we look for is a bit of that, and it's an art as much as it is a science. It's more of an art than anything else. Second thing we look for is, people call it, spike. No, I don't really know what that really. What's a spike? People who break molds are not just breaking molds because they're starting a company. They just like breaking molds. Listen, they don't really care about what you think of them. They don't really care. They're very happy to wear a pink, clothes in a mall and have a mohawk. They just look like that. They don't really actually care. There are gradations of that, but they don't care what you think about them. And they come in good and bad shapes. So what we look for is, what is the spike this person has? What is this person really telling me about himself or herself? And is that spike the right kind of spike for this business? Okay. Most people get confused about that because they're trying to put together this pattern matching thing that VCs get accused of a lot. It's a real accusation. They look for founders here and they try to put together a jigsaw puzzle here.
Yeah.
Oh, does he look like Elon Musk?
Yeah.
Really, at that point, all people need to look for is a differentiating characteristic. If I tell you, you look like this, this is the shape of your face, this is the beard, this is the head, you'll probably find 20 people in a crowd that look somewhat like you. You can't really recognize it.
Correct.
If I tell somebody, this guy has got the biggest nose in the world, and a nose is what matters in this business, you can much more easily go find that big nose because you're looking for a big nose.
Correct.
You're not looking for a jigsaw.
Right.
You're looking for one thing that matters.
Right.
The rest of it can figure it out.
Very interesting.
So we really look for that a lot.
Lovely. I want to end the conversation with talking about a lot more about AI, AGI, and hardware. Are you guys folks also looking to invest in AI plus robotics, AI plus hardware, especially with things like Elon is doing with Optimus, etc.?
Yeah. Yesterday, one of the pictures I took at 9 p.m. was a robotics company
Lovely.
doing humanoid robotics for household work. So yeah, absolutely, we are looking at that. We have invested in a bunch of those companies. We invested in a company called Skilled AI in the US that is basically building a foundation model for robotics work. And we have invested in Dexterity AI in the US and it does dexterous work with AI. And we have looked at a bunch of other companies like that. We spend time with many others. So we absolutely are looking at that very actively. And we think there is a lot of potential to bring that to life, to bring AI into a real body that can move around that.
Super. Awesome. It was absolutely amazing speaking to you, Hemant. I think there is so many tidbits and insights that we've gotten from this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the Inner Circle. And I think a lot of founders and soon to be founders are going to find so much value from this.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.